say soul-thread religion. No, soul-thread religion, right? Thank you very, very much. Today's talk is entitled Shadow to Light. And basically what I'm going to talk about today is just the premise behind the program that we're going to be participating in starting September 5th. I'm going to start first with, why am I so excited about it? And hoping that you also will be excited about it. I'm really excited about it because it doesn't deal with the symptoms. When we look out in the world, we see a lot of symptoms. But what this program does is going to the root of the issues. For example, is there a bad part of town here in Lawrence? Oh, come on. Really? You people are going to tell me no?
Yes.
Challenge. Okay, so where is the challenge section? Okay, where is the challenge section? East Lawrence. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you. East Lawrence. And what do we know about?
Redbud also.
Redbud?
Iowa, 23rd.
Okay. Everybody going, oh yeah. And so what do you think when you think of that community? What do you think? Do you walk around there? No.
East Lawrence. Yes. East Lawrence. I said yes, East Lawrence.
So what I hear in the debate, for those of you who are viewing at home, there is a debate. What I hear in the debate is that, yes, East Lawrence, but Red Bridge, not at night.
Redbud.
Redbud. Thank you. I live by Red Bridge, that's why. Redbud. Okay. That's the symptom. That's the symptom. What's really underneath that is the shadow of poverty and the shadow of other. That's what's beneath that. And so that's why I'm really excited about this. Because this is a heart-centered approach. There's no shame, there's no blame, there's no guilt. But it asks you to look at who you are and what you believe. And then, what are you willing to transform? What are you willing to transform? And so, this program is by Dr. Shariff Abdullah, and he has really distilled it into the shadows, equating it to, it's really about our unconscious fears. Our unconscious fears. So we'll look at them today. We know that he has said that there are 4 shadows for the American culture, right? The shadow of violence, the shadow of other, the shadow of lack, and the shadow of despair. And for each of those, they can be transformed. For example, for the shadow of violence, it can be transformed into the light of peace and security. The shadow of other can be transformed into the light of inclusivity. The shadow of lack, imagine knowing that you are truly abundant and you are enough. The shadow of despair into the light of deep fulfillment. So I'm going to talk about each one of these. But before I do, you know there had to be a little clip, right? I found this clip and it's really interesting because it looks at the insidiousness of our fears. Roll it. So I'm taking the blame for that one. That was me. fears. Did you relate to any of it? You know, Bonita was here on Friday night doing the open mic, and she brought her puppet Clairvoyant. And one of the things that she mentioned was that public speaking is like really, a lot of people are afraid of public speaking. So I saw that and it made me smile. The thing that I really liked was the whole elevator one, you know, where it started to get like larger and larger, the fear. And then what happened to our little dog? He got fear as well, right? And then was covered in fear. Now, for most of us, it was a traumatic event that happened that initiated our awareness of fear. A traumatic event. For me, I remember my first one. I was a little kid and I touched the stove. Fire, ow, right? Now, meanwhile, my mom had been telling me, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove. So I touched the stove. But what fear does on a personal level is, it keeps us small. It keeps us disempowered. It keeps us angry and self-destructive. And on a societal level, fear perpetuates injustices. So the time right now to let go of your fears. They no longer are serving you in the way they did when you were learning things as a baby, as a child. So we're going to start with the shadow of violence first. The World Health Organization, they describe violence as the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group of or community, which either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. So that's what they are saying. We can see that in that we have a huge amount of suicide. We're at epidemic levels with suicide. And they also say that the violence can be inflicted with either a physical, sexual, or a psychological component, and it can be attack or it could be a deprivation, either one. So what do? When we do this work, we are transforming that violence into the light of peace. That we know in this very moment that we are all safe. In this moment, we are all safe. There's nothing to fear regarding our safety. That we can see the wonder, not only in nature, but in music and art, and just beautiful things. And that we appreciate what are our own gifts, and we celebrate them, while knowing that we're never alone. That God is with us, in us, and as us. There was this wonderful article that was written by Dr. Bruce Perry, and the article is entitled, "Why Does Violence Happen?" And I found this at teacher.scholastic.com, and I can hear an echo over here. And in the article he wrote, when we become desensitized to death or killing, violence increases. When death and violence surround someone, the value of human life can diminish, and the horror of violent death can decrease. In the United States, we will watch 200,000 graphic violent acts by the age of 18. 200,000. And we're talking about TV, we're talking about film, we're talking about video games especially. And so we become desensitized. He also writes, when we become more detached from each other and from common unifying beliefs, violence also increases. Without being connected to others, we care less for their welfare. So when individuals become isolated, marginalized, and without some connection to those around them, violence increases. And we've seen that over and over again. So, we're going to look at the shadow of other. And so when we look at the shadow of other, this is really about group identification. Who do we identify with as a group? Because it's relational. It's relational. And the reason that we have these groups is because there's some sort of reward or punishment in associating with these groups. So for example, in America, the dominant culture is a white male. That's the dominant, right, connection of that group. And so there's a reward in that. There's also a superiority versus inferiority concept of that. There's a power over. And that's where we get a lot of our isms from. Our racism, our sexism, etc., our classism. And so this then gets transformed into the light of inclusivity, where we live without the labels. We're not invested in those labels. We're not invested in judging each other, because we know that all are welcome, all are equal, and even where the differences are, those differences are celebrated, not poo-pooed or shunned. Yeah, I said it. So in these groups, this is where you see those practices of exclusivity occurring in our group dynamics. I mean, just turn on any TV and watch any sports game, right? Us versus them. We're better than they are. And that works throughout all the group identification. So it's a power over type of situation. The next one is the shadow of lack. Now, lack is defined as being in a state of not having enough, or the state of like there's nothing, you're without. That is lack. And we have that tendency to be in that deprivation mode and poverty. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first came into Unity, I was definitely in lack consciousness. I lived there. I used to have those fantasies that I think I told you before, that if I didn't do well at my job, I was going to be the next bag lady with the shopping cart rolling down the streets of Manhattan, right? Real deprivation. I wouldn't give to myself. And when I came in here, I realized that I didn't have to be that way. What's also interesting is that greed and hoarding is also on the shadow of lack. Greed or hoarding. Because there's a mindset still that there isn't enough. So I have to keep accumulating and holding because there isn't enough for everyone. And when you're in this kind of framework, there's a lot of anxiety and anger around it. Anxiety to be about, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to put food on the table for my family? Or anger. Those people are taking my job. Yes, Elliot. Okay. No? Yes? No? Okay. No. Thank you. So how do we transform that? We get into the practice of gratitude. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And we shift from comparing ourselves to others. Because when we are in that comparison, what we're doing is we're either better than or we're worse than when we do our comparisons. Okay, so that's power over, or you're in that lack consciousness. And then we get to realize that we really have all of these gifts that we can help others with. That there truly is enough for us to share with other people. And when I first came into Unity, one of the things that I worked on were the denials and affirmations they work really well with this shadow. And I know a lot of people have come in underneath that shadow of black and have used denials and affirmations to really kind of shift that anxiety and shift that brain, get your brain out of that groove into the reality of what's possible. All right. We now have the shadow of despair. And what I really found this quote, people can live weeks without food, days without water, minutes without oxygen, but not a moment without hope. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. And that says a lot about our culture. You know, it says a lot about the violence that occurs here, the hopelessness, which of course then leads to depression and suicide. So, how do we shift that? Through feeling that deep fulfillment. And of course it always starts with ourselves. That we really truly love ourselves. That we accept who we are. Not when we get there. Not when I lose 10 pounds. Not when I grow an inch. Not when I learn how to whatever. But right now. Right now. In all of your amazingness. That you love yourself. That you accept yourself. And of course, knowing that there is always hope. So this is a mighty amount of work that we are planning to do in the next 12 weeks. So yes, I am uber excited. I hope that most of you will join us in this journey, because I do believe it will be a journey. And I just also want to say that we have been touted as one of 2 communities that's at capacity, close to capacity for this program. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome, really awesome. I got an email from another community locally. Well, if you need help, we'll be more than happy to take some of your folks. So please join us. I thank you for who you are, for your willingness to shift, to transform. That's in your mission statement. That's who you say you are. And I'm grateful to be participating with you.
Can you still register this week, though?
Yes, you can still register this week, and this week it is, thank you, 150, because it changes till the 10th, and then after the 10th it's 180, which is the regular price. Any other questions? All right, I'll see you on September 5th, 7 p.m.